What's up, YouTube? Ryan Devlin here. I'm trying some more different kinds of content again. Really appreciate the love on the last video. I did not expect getting that many views, likes, comments, and people seem to really resonate with the content. So here I am trying some more stuff. I'm going to go kind of down a different rabbit hole of, being a freelance professional musician, talking about my practicing like in the last video. Now I kind of want to talk about what it's like to tour as a freelance musician and how I got started doing it. So I'm going to separate this video into three categories, and I'm going to talk about each of them in depth, sort of like how I did the practice video. Tell you about my personal journey, how I started, where I started, and how I've got to the place that I'm at today, and hopefully the place I get to in the future. To begin, I really didn't start traveling and touring until I went to grad school at New England Conservatory. I was living in Orlando and trying to do small local tours around here in Central Florida before thinking about even going out of state. I knew about venues out of state, but I didn't really know how to get the ball rolling, nor did I think a venue would take a chance on me because I was kind of like an unknown Central Florida saxophone player. I had a little bit of a social media following, but it didn't really get me people into the door. I was struggling to even, really get big numbers at clubs in Orlando. So I figured to myself, well, it's going to be really hard for me to get numbers at a club out of state. So when I got accepted into New England Conservatory, I had this idea of I'm just going to cold email venues with my resume. I had a record coming out, so I was going to send them, direct files of the record and kind of give them a little bit of a description as to my social media and how I could get people in the door at their clubs. So I emailed 3 or 4 venues in Boston just to see what would happen. So I made this email template, and I'm going to show a screenshot of it on the screen. And like I said, it basically gave a couple bullet points and a little bit about me. I didn't have an EPK at the time. I kind of just wrote a little summary as to who I was, what I was trying to do, and how I could help the venue. And I made sure that I really made it apparent that I had a social media following that would help get people in the door. And so doing this, I waited a couple weeks, and 2 venues actually got back to me. One was in Maine and one was in Boston, this local music store called Virtuosity. They used to have a music series, and I got that gig lined up pretty soon after I moved to Boston. So that was a good confidence builder for me. Then I started looking at other venues, even, kind of in between Orlando and Boston. So I hit up Rudy's Jazz Room in Nashville, Tennessee, and their club owner got back to me immediately. And that was my first show out of state that I had a completely sold out set for, which was really exciting. Now, I will preface this by saying, I would say the first 2 years of touring that I did, maybe even more than that, I made no income. It was a complete investment. I took a lot of chances. A lot of people helped me out with crashing at their place. A lot of musicians that were my friends, were really generous with their time and didn't ask for much money because they also wanted to tour. So, we sort of shared investments with my close musician friends that I still play with today. I'm very thankful for that. But I saw it as more of an investment while I was going to NEC and in school, to help me kind of get to a place where it could become a stable source of income later on. I made a lot of investments. I would say the last 2 years that I've been touring, I'm finally making money. And the first 2 years or 2.5 years, I didn't make anything. I basically broke even, if not lost some money. But that was the first step for me, was taking chances on venues by cold emailing them, making sure I showed them that I was professional, had this record coming out. I was going to help their venue by bringing in new people. I was telling them about my younger audience following on Instagram and social media, and really just being open and honest with them, and just trying to say, how can I help your venue get more people in the door while I'm also, you're also kind of taking a chance on me, this new artist from Florida that's a saxophone player that plays, modal jazz. Like, is that going to be good for your venue? And I just took chances, and I emailed all of these, places around New England, eventually around Tennessee. I was trying to go to New York too. Obviously, we'll talk about that in a second. And through these tours, which is going to be this is a transition to the second thing. Through these tours, I met a lot of other musicians, a lot of other touring musicians that were older than me, had a bigger following, had a way bigger tour schedule that I became friends with and were able to talk to. And that also helped me gain the connections that I have now, where I can go on the road for a week at a time, or a few weeks at a time, and come back and make my rent. The second big thing in the touring lifestyle and being a freelance professional musician is the connections you make and maintaining those connections. And as my dad says, never burn a bridge. For me, when I was moving up to Boston, coming from Orlando, I had a good amount of contacts from Orlando and kind of the South scene. But as I moved north and met more people that were associated with Berkeley, New England Conservatory, and the people that they brought in, trying to take my lessons with Jerry Berganzi as seriously as possible from a saxophonist standpoint, but also getting inside his head about touring, and can I meet some of his friends that are my heroes as well. He played with Gene Perlin and Adam Nussbaum a lot, who were and still are heroes of mine. And I was just trying to get inside of his head on more than just the being a saxophone player perspective. I wanted to know what it's like for him and what his life's been like, being a professional freelance touring guy. So I gained connections through those school connections that I had. And one in particular is Gene Perla, who I still work with a lot right now. I'm in his Lighthouse Project band with Ravi Coltrane and Adam Nussbaum. And he plays in my quartet a lot. And every time I get to play with him, it's a dream come true, because he's probably my favorite living bass player. I've listened to him so much over the years. And, all that being said, he has been his own manager for his whole entire professional career. So his Rolodex of contacts, of clubs, and his experience on the road, I got to pick his brain a lot, because when I met him, we started playing together, and we would go on the road together and have lots of time off, and I would just pick his brain about all these things being a professional musician. And he shared a lot of insight and a lot of contacts with me that then I was able to make contact with myself and continue a professional relationship with. So now I'm at a point, 5 years into touring, or maybe about 4 years into touring I'd say 2 years touring full-time, 4 years, kind of part-time, where I can go on routes that I know will make me money, and that I know are consistent clubs that will hire me on certain times of the year, certain days of the week. And that's all kind of from knowing people like Gene, Jerry Berganzi, Billy Hart. I've gotten a lot of contacts from people like them. And then they also, tell people about me, because I try and be as professional as possible on and off the bandstand. And it's just kind of a snowball, and social media is a big part of that too, making connections. But, these professionals that are on the road, the masters that have learned from, the Mount Rushmore of jazz and this music are still alive and playing, and for me to be able to play a lot with Gene and Nussbaum, and a little bit with Billy Hart, a little bit more coming up with him, just maintaining those connections is super duper important, and continuing them yourself and trying to learn from them and kind of, take the baton of contacts and musical knowledge that they have really helps. And, I have a contact sheet now that grows for the United States and a little bit of Canada and some in Europe now as well, that I can, reach out to and be my own boss, make my own schedule, which is super cool. And that's a great positive part about being a freelance, touring musician, is you are your own boss. You get to make your own schedule, maybe not have as much financial security at times, but that is one really nice thing that I like about this job. So that's number two. Besides, number one being cold calling, number two is definitely, maintaining contacts and learning from the people that came before you on how to do it. And that's what I try and do all the time. Very important to have marquee dates that usually on the weekends, or maybe a weekday masterclass that is going to pay for a majority, if not the whole, travel costs of going on tour, right? So last summer I went on a maybe a 10-day tour with a trio, and we had, I think over the 10 days we had 8 or 9 gigs, and 2 or 3 of those 8 or 9 gigs were paying over $1,000 for our trio, which was great. I think one of them paid over $2,000, and one of them had a hotel room included, and they gave us some travel money. So those were basically, those 3 gigs paid for all of the gas, all of the lodging that I had to pay for on the gigs that didn't provide that. So with all three of those and then some, we didn't use all of the money from those 3 dates. They paid for all the things that would hurt. They paid for all the expenses. So food, gas, lodging, because we drove this tour. We didn't fly. And that made it a lot easier to then book smaller filler dates because, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's hard to get a gig that pays a ton of money unless you're playing like a festival or, like I said, going to a school. So the gigs that we had that paid that big amount of money allowed us to play maybe some smaller venues on those filler dates. And then that only adds to your income because the expenses are already paid from one of or two of the bigger dates. So that way we all came across with almost, I think, a little bit over $1,000 for the week, which was nice. That's like what we netted after all the expenses because we had those big dates. So I recommend really looking for a big date on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, unless you can get like a master class at a school. Those are always higher paying as well. And then you can set that as your marquee date, your point date, and then you book around that. And you can also like look at, depending on if you're driving or flying, like flying in on certain days is cheaper than others, right? So you can try and fly in on an off day, play a smaller gig at a smaller venue, make a little bit of bread, and then go to your big gig, right? Sometimes flying into a smaller city and doing that, and then driving to the bigger city where the gig is, like the marquee date is smart. Just trying to mitigate the expenses as much as possible and getting that show or that masterclass that pays for your expenses and then being able to book the tour after that makes it a lot easier to make money, and you'll be able to string more dates together because you're not worried about trying to get a big club on like a Saturday, or a Friday to get a big audience all the time. You can try and play like little dive bars or, art collective shows, like ones that it's more about the passion and the music rather than the money. I like playing those shows more sometimes than the bigger ones just because it feels less high stakes. It's more just about, the music and stuff. But, to make the money on the road, you got to play the gigs, that pay the most. So this way I've found it's a little bit more enjoyable, and you can string more dates together when you have the marquee date and then the smaller ones before and after that. And you can, make a 10-day tour and make maybe, $1,500 per person, depending on how big your band is, and come home with that. So to wrap things up, touring is a dream come true for me. I'm really excited to seeing what the future holds. I've got some things coming up overseas. I'll be posting about that more. Just to give you a little bit of a preview, in October, I'm going to the country of Belize to play for a couple days. And then this group that I'm a part of called Sidestep is going to Taiwan in December and Japan. Really excited about that. And I think I'm also going to France, Paris, France in December. Really looking forward to that. And then next May, I have some very big announcements that I can't share 100% yet, waiting for the promo and stuff to come out. But really excited about that. And I don't think any of these opportunities wouldn't have come if I didn't invest in myself and didn't try and become a touring musician. And I think that's a big part of why I'm having the opportunities I'm having now and able to live the life that I live now. It's really about just taking a chance on yourself, and don't wait to be perfect. Try and push yourself to get the connections and get the opportunities that you want by pursuing them yourself. I think the days of waiting for a phone call for a big opportunity are slim to none. Not saying that it won't happen, but for me, I've just always been like, I'm going to make my own opportunities. I'm going to make my own version of the life that I really want to live. I hope this video helps you maybe take that next step and helps you kind of see the path that I took and sees how it's possible to be a touring freelance musician in 2025 and hopefully beyond. So please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what else you want me to talk about. I like making this kind of content, and I'm down to hear what you guys have to say and think about this. See you in the next video.